Welcome to the most important week of the year for the podcast industry. Welcome to Podcast Movement 2025.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Here we are, Podcaster Stage 2. Podcaster Stage 1 better watch their back.
We will be fighting Podcaster Stage 1 at the end of this presentation.
If you agree with what we say, we march on Podcaster Stage 1 at dawn.
Actually, though, I think we need to forget about that plan and unite to march on the real enemy, which is the hotel that closed the water park.
Absolutely.
For the week.
Absolutely. The only reason I am here is because I was told there would be a lazy river. The information I'm about to give you is not even really that good. Outrageous. Outrageous. Anyway, I'm Megan Hatcher-Mays. I'm a co-host of the only podcast that exists, Text Me Back Podcast.
I am Lindy West. I'm also a co-host of Text Me Back Podcast, and we are real-life best friends. We met in high school. Now we're 43. We're still friends.
We're still friends, and now we have a podcast. So today, look at that. And I figured out how to animate in Canva. So get into it.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit more about our podcast. Basically, the vibe is you don't have anything to talk about with your best friend, but you call them anyway. And at the end of 2 hours, your stomach hurts from laughing, and you just had the best day ever. That is the vibe of our show. We're very proud to make it independently, even though it's very, very hard. Not just because, it gives us the freedom to make the show that we want to make, but I think I've been radicalized over the last 4 days into realizing that, 4 random men should not get to decide what makes a good podcast, and every podcast company is 3 guys who decide that. So I disagree. So our podcast we make independently. I think other people should make podcasts independently, and that is what we're going to talk a little bit about today.
We're going to walk you through what we have learned. Hopefully we will inspire you to feel free to reject whatever is going on in the corporate podcast landscape, no offense, and make something amazing that people want to listen to and that you have full creative control over and you can feel proud of.
Yes.
So here we go.
Here is what inspired our journey. We've been talking about doing... We're old, so we used to talk about making a radio show since we first met 25 years ago, and we used to just drive around in Lindy's Volvo talking about bits we would do on our radio show.
Can I interrupt you and
Yes.
say I actually have a vivid memory of sitting in your basement at your parents' house typing on a manual typewriter segment ideas for our radio show. And then actually I remember you sitting on the couch making fun of me for doing something so stupid.
And that's Text Me Back Podcast.
Yeah, but now who was right?
Yeah,
It was me.
Well, you were right.
Thank you.
So we used to talk about it all the time. We used to brainstorm bits we were going to do. And so then we got the chance to make our podcast, so we went for it immediately.
Yeah, and so now we make it independently. We have thousands.
Upwards of thousands
of very disturbingly dedicated fans. And did we quit our day jobs? No.
Not yet.
But we do make money every month. And all we had to do was whatever this is. Be ourselves, talking to the microphones, and, stay true to what we think is funny and good.
So we actually... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's my line.
Oh, my God.
So we did not... Here's why we are good resources on this. We did not start independently. We started with a company. So we launched the podcast in 2023.
Oop.
Is that right?
There we go. I ruined a joke. Sorry. Go ahead.
We launched the podcast in 2023 with the Seattle NPR affiliate. We're from Seattle, although Megan lives in D.C. And we pitched the podcast to them because we already had connections with them because Seattle is small. And so it was kind of like we were just chit-chatting with friends who work there, and they were like, oh, I bet our podcast division would be interested in trying out a comedy podcast because that's not really what NPR does. They had never done anything like our show before. It was mostly news shows or reported shows. They would do a news of the week commentary that was very neutral. And they didn't have an opinionated comedy podcast. And so we had to do a bunch of, when we first started, we had to jump through a bunch of hoops where we had to make, like I made a theme song that was all about how we're not reporters and it's not objective. Please don't.
We don't fact check.
Yeah.
We don't do anything like that.
Because technically we worked for the state government.
Yeah.
So all of which is to say, not necessarily a good fit. But they took a chance on us, and it was good and bad, and Megan's going to tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, they did pay us very modestly to make it, so it was a good way to start out because we could kind of just like figure out the actual like mechanics of podcasting. But eventually it became very clear that it was a bad fit. Like Lindy said, NPR are experts in making deeply reported journalistic podcasts. They are not experts in making comedy podcasts. We are not podcast experts, but we are experts at jokes. And being relentlessly charming. So we kept trying to like navigate this mismatch that we felt that we had with them, and we were kind of compromising stuff that we thought was funny to fit into their sensibility instead of the other way around. So it started to become clear after probably, I think, a little less than a year that it was not going to be a good fit going forward.
Yes. So we decided to leave. They offered us the opportunity to stay, but not get paid anymore. And we preferred the opportunity of leave. And so we left and started to make the show ourselves. And to their credit, like, we love them. We love NPR and we love KOW, our little affiliate.
Or put upon public media experts, yeah.
And they did help us a lot. I mean, they commissioned original music for the show. They paid for our art, graphic design stuff. They bought our microphones, which was really nice. And they taught us how to do it. So it was kind of a nice little masterclass.
It was a good way to start.
And they also set us free with full ownership of our IP and our RSS feed. And, they let us keep all the stuff that they bought us, which was really nice.
Which was very nice of them.
But we could have done it without that, okay?
So why didn't we sell out? Well, we tried, bitch. We really did. We met with a bunch of podcast companies to be like, hey, do you want our Deranged Best Friend podcast? And ultimately, it didn't really make sense for either of us. Our show does well, and we make money from it, mostly from Patreon subscriptions, but a little bit from ads. But we still have a lot of room to grow. We know that there are more people who will like our show out there somewhere. We just have to find them or help them find us. But podcast companies, I guess reasonably, are very hyper-fixated on metrics. It's just that it takes a long time to build a successful show. But I think as we've seen in the industry over the last month, podcast company, no company is really all that interested in taking risks or having patience. They just, I think, have pretty much blatantly stated they want to just hire people who are already famous and expend as little effort as possible so that they can make as much money as possible. For what it's worth, I think that you will eventually reach the end of famous people, and it's actually not a good bet to just hire already, or like B-list former SNL cast members to have a podcast. You will run out of landing space for a podcast like that. Like, you'll just be saturated with like Bobby Moynihan podcast.
Okay, I would listen. I don't know why you're going down this road, because I would listen to any
Bobby Moynihan podcast. Anyway, so I think if you look at the top podcasts, a lot of the people in the top 100 podcasts were not already famous when they got their show. The show did not start out popular. It didn't start out famous. It takes work and effort to do this, but it's a lot easier, especially if you have $1 billion, to just try to find somebody who is already has like a substantial built-in audience.
I mean, I understand why it's a bad business decision to take a chance on two weirdos who just want to talk to each other. A thing that might be a slow burn and take a while to build, but it always is going to take a while to build. And what we were dealing with at KOW was they wanted us to be at 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 downloads immediately when they didn't have any money to put into marketing and they didn't want to wait for people to find it and for anything to grow. And I understand they can't afford it. No one can afford anything anymore because of the evils of capitalism.
Yes. But ultimately, I mean, you can talk more about this, but the trade-off really wasn't worth it to kind of give up a lot on our end for very little in return.
Right. So when we did have pitch meetings with big companies, we got a few offers that just weren't very appealing because it was common that they would own some part of the IP, and we really just couldn't see what we were going to get in return. There's sort of a lot of empty language about, oh, we'll help you with marketing. Almost nothing concrete that we could actually, what's happening? Interference.
Oh, no.
So sorry. We met with several companies who were like, yeah, we'll promote it on our socials in exchange for 30% of
your revenue. Yeah.
Right. So, and I talked to some friends who are much more successful in podcasting. Everyone that I talked to was like, don't do it. Don't believe anyone who tells you that they'll help you with marketing unless it's a freelance marketing genius that you hire independently, where there's some sort of contract that they have to actually try to help you, because anyone can say, I'm going to help you with marketing.
I mean,
and what does that even mean?
The reality is that even with a podcast company, you are going to end up doing a lot of stuff yourself anyways. So you might as well keep your revenue and your intellectual property and your creative control.
Because even at KOW, the marketing was, oh, Lindy already has 100,000 followers on Instagram. We don't need to do any marketing.
Yeah.
She can just post it on her Instagram. Well, that's not how Instagram works. Instagram doesn't want to help me promote my podcast. And so we were micromanaging the edit because the executives didn't understand what was funny. We were doing the marketing. We were doing the socials. They did pay for the music and the art, but it was people that we knew. It was our friends that we could have paid if we had gotten together, scraped together a little bit of money. So it just started to be like, what is the added value of this relationship? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And then the more we've been doing it on our own, I think the more radicalized we are. And I'm starting to feel guilty, like we're doing a propaganda to abandon all of these nice people who are
they are
giving
all
us
very nice
mini Hershey bars. But and maybe different people have different experiences, but this is our experience.
Yeah.
It was like, this feels like a middleman who takes more than we're going to be getting back.
Yeah.
So
we also threatened our listeners. Oh, wait, did I skip one?
Yeah.
Oh, I ruined a joke again. Anyway, so our independent era, which is what we are in now, here's kind of the steps that we took to get there. When we left KOW, we knew we had to move fast. So there was no gap in our feed between when we left KOW and when we made an independent show. It was very scary because we literally were like, how do you get it onto the internet? Where does it go?
I will say that is one thing that they offered.
Yes.
Is they were like, yeah, we know which button you push
we know what button you push. Yes.
Make the sound go on the computer. We didn't know that.
We didn't know that. So we were really transparent about the show's new status and about our need for financial support from our audience. So we had an Instagram Live and we're like, we're leaving KOW, we're launching a Patreon, we really need your support. And we were very lucky to get it pretty fast, very solid support pretty quickly. And that's because our audience really loves our show. I think we try to stay as authentic as possible. We always trust our instincts about what we think is funny. We obviously think a lot about what our audience will like, but it doesn't necessarily drive, what we do. I mean, there's no reason why Lindy has a segment called Normal News where she just finds the worst worm you've ever seen on Instagram and then be like, science is saying they've discovered a new worm. That shouldn't be popular, but our audience loves it.
You wouldn't believe how many new worms they're discovering.
It's crazy how many worms they're finding. So I think it's just the authenticity of our show leads people to be really supportive of it. And being able to kind of drop the constraints of making it with KOW or some other company really lets us make the show at the derangement level we prefer. And we have not seen any audience drop off since we left KUW. And in fact, our show has grown because I think we're really just able to like unleash what we trust is good and funny.
Yeah, this is off script, but my day job is writer. And I've been a working freelance writer and author for like, I don't know, 20 years.
Yeah.
Oh no. And people always ask me, how do I do that? How do I get that job? And of course there's different kinds of writer. I am not a journalist. I'm not out reporting. I am a voicey opinion / humor / memoir writer. So if you want to be that kind of writer, the thing I always tell people is don't chase what you think other people are going to like. The product in that case is you. You are the product. And so the best thing that you can do to be marketable and successful is to lean into yourself and become more yourself, because that is a utterly unique commodity. And the deeper I get into trusting my instincts and trusting what I think is funny and what I think is good, which is really, if you listen to the podcast, you can tell that's really what we're doing. We're running on instinct. The more successful I have been. And I think the exact same thing applies here. If you want to make a goofy podcast with your best friend, you can't be chasing trends. You can't be trying to guess what you think the audience wants, because it's going to feel inauthentic. And I think the reason that people connect with our podcast is because we're very, very transparently ourselves. And then when that becomes an embarrassing disaster, which it always does, then we make fun of ourselves for being an embarrassing disaster.
Right.
And people feel, it's just like a disordered parasocial nightmare, but it's also wonderful.
They're saying that's the top kind of podcast.
So yeah, we really, really make sure that we because we're dependent on Patreon, we really make sure that our audience knows that we love them and we appreciate them. We do a lot of work to foster the community around the show. We are constantly highlighting listener emails, listener voicemails. We are doing little contests. We have a very active Discord that has absolutely become its own.
Truly has nothing to do with us. We are ancillary to our own
They
Discord
don't care
at
if we
this
live or
point.
die. Sometimes we'll pop in there. We're in there all the time, but like they barely notice. They're like all getting married, and I don't know. And
To each other.
Yeah. And we're very transparent about where the Patreon money goes. So I think that's really important to let people know. If you love this thing about the show, you get to hear it because you are a part of this community that is making this show possible. And so I think our listeners know that their Patreon money is being reinvested in the show that they love. And very little of it goes
Very little.
to us.
Very little.
We are able, so when we first went independent, we were doing everything ourselves, and then that was not sustainable. Now we're able to pay our producer. We're able to attend conferences like this. We have, other various professionals that we work with to do things that are maybe not our forte, so that we can focus on being stupid. And then in turn, and not just financially, our audience really is part of the show. Like one of the cutest things that has developed totally organically is that people started we do all these segments, like basically anything that we talk about, we pretend it's a segment. And so then the listeners started sending in jingles for our segments. And so now we have all these segments that we never intended to do again, and now we have to keep doing them.
Yeah, because the songs are so good. Like we get listeners, like one instance, somebody arranged their own version of Handel's Messiah, changed the words to Tidings, which is a segment that we do, and like hired a chorus to sing like a beautiful like church version of this song. And so now it's like, well, I guess we gotta do
got a
tidings
full
every
choir.
week because this choir is beautiful. It's angels from heaven singing for like a fart podcast.
Like
it's incredible.
One time I made some throwaway joke, and I don't even remember the origin, where I said we were doing a segment called Segment Pubes.
People using bad ethics and systems.
And then we pretended that it stood for people using bad ethics and systems, and then we talked about politics or something. And then we were never going to say Segment Pubes again into a microphone, hopefully. And then a listener made a Segment Pubes theme song, and it's beautiful. And so now we have to do it all the time.
Now we got to do it all the time. But that is just a way for people to feel like they're a part of it. It's sort of like a two-way parasocial street, I guess, parentheses healthy, where people feel like, you know, they're a part of our show because they are, and in many ways, not just financially, but they are a part of the community that grows around our show. Now, what else did we do? We also threatened our listeners with eternal damnation. Okay, now we strongly imply that our recruits, I mean listeners, would be consumed by the demon Malachi if they did not subscribe to our Patreon. However, I still think our growth had more to do with the mutual respect and a shared sensibility with our audience than the threat of eternal damnation. I think.
Yeah, I think that's right. And you know, we are still steadily growing. Maybe we are growing more slowly than if we were out there chasing trends. I don't know. But the thing is that we don't know about trends because we're old and we're not good at chasing.
I can't run.
We can't
Where
run.
would I go?
So we're just going to keep doing what we're doing because our audience keeps finding us because we're being authentically ourselves.
Right.
So chasing trends doesn't work anyway. Like I said, it feels inauthentic and no one cares. Also, if it's a trend, it means other people are doing it. Stupid waste of time.
All right, a quick word on metrics. They are very fake in our experience. You can sort of take your fake metrics and then compare them to the fake metrics of other podcasts. And then from there, you can figure out how your podcast fakely stacks up with the other fake podcast. But we just really feel like, I mean, it's like plays on Apple Podcasts is just every time someone pauses and then plays the podcast again. So our play numbers on Apple Podcasts are like 1 billion plays. That doesn't mean anything at all. A better metric, the only metric in our view, is conversion. So we have, which is like the number of people who listen to your show versus the number of people who subscribe to the Patreon. Ours is like 15% on the low end and probably 20% on a good. That's really high. Based on the other podcasters we've talked to, that's a very high rate. I think the last person we talked to about it said their conversion rate was closer to 5%. And I think the reason is because we have this sort of, again, two-way street with our audience. It's not just like, oh, you listen to the show and you like it, whatever. It's more of a community of like-minded crazy people who like to laugh.
Yeah. And we would love to put up Joe Rogan numbers.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't we all? And someday I think we will. Someday I think Text Me Back podcast will decide the next
and
president.
the Gorilla Dust people will come knocking for those host-read ads any minute now.
But for us, it's vastly better to have a smaller base of super committed listeners than tens of thousands of casual listeners who don't really care about you and would never join the Patreon. We are super, super proud to have a foundation of exceedingly loyal weirdos who support us when we ask for help. They're so responsive, and honestly, like, we have enough to keep the podcast going and let it have that slow burn that we wouldn't have ever gotten anywhere else.
Yeah. This is what we in the cult business called the loyalty pledge. That beautiful moment where your recruits pledge fealty to the all-seeing God Kings, or as we say in the common parlance, podcast co-hosts.
That's right. That's what they're saying.
That's the Text Me Back cult guarantee. All right. Go ahead.
Okay, so to go back to the day that we went independent, at first we did everything ourselves. I was teaching myself to edit audio and editing audio and releasing audio all on the same day.
I was making YouTube videos.
Yeah,
like,
Meagan was editing video.
What the hell?
Meagan became a businesswoman. Meagan created an LLC.
I did. Yeah.
I don't help with that.
That's all completely invisible to Lindy. She has no knowledge of this.
But it was not, especially with our day jobs, it was not sustainable. It was untenable. So luckily, thanks to our Patreon subscribers, we were able to ask for help and say, please, the podcast is going to die, or I am, or which I guess is the same thing, if we don't have any money to pay someone. And so then they stepped up and we increased our pledges and we were able to get outside support. Yes, we could keep more of our money, of our Patreon money, if we didn't need help. If I was willing to become a full-time audio editor instead of my 9 other jobs, but then we would be dead, and then there would be no beloved podcast for the people. So again, theoretically, podcast production companies can provide some of these things, but you got to consider the trade-offs. Are you getting to keep your IP, etc.? What we did instead was we sought out other independent makers and producers, like Allie Slice, our triplet flame, and our trusted advisor to our cult, and Lauren Pacell, who you've probably seen.
Yeah, I think she's on like 20 panels and they were all great.
Truly the best money we've ever spent in our lives. No offense to producer Allie Slice. But Lauren spent like one day and got us on 900 famous podcasts.
It was amazing. It really
was amazing.
I think the goal is to really try to work your connections to find someone who understands your show's vibe. I think you could pretty much hire anyone, but I think the reason that our relationships are successful is because Allie gets what we're trying to do with our show. She listens to our show and she likes our show. Lauren also listens to our show. I was shocked, actually. I was like, you listen to our show? She listens to our show and she likes the show. So she understands the comps, what other shows should she try to get us on that are similar to ours. And so when you're thinking about people that you want to hire to help you make your show, it's if you have a bees podcast, you should hire somebody who has a background making nature podcasts, who can make the connections that you need to make with these shows that are relevant to your show. And there's sorry to bring up bad news, but there's dozens, probably hundreds of podcast professionals who are looking for work and who are good and talented at what they do and can help you make it. I think it's really good to take a chance on somebody. So maybe somebody's just starting out. You could probably get a discount if you work with somebody who's kind of just getting their start, and you can kind of grow together to build something while you're kind of figuring out how to do it.
All right, we're running out of time, so I'm going to go so fast.
Here's how we did it. We've talked a lot about this already. Pre-existing name recognition helped. People know who Lindy is. People sort of know who I am if you occasionally watch MSNBC. But again, all of Lindy's Instagram followers did not convert to listeners. Again, we asked for and received a lot of help from people who are in the podcasting industry who know how to do this and know how to help us. Again, this one is, I'm so sorry, is not advice, but you should be relentlessly charming. You should spend 40 years honing your ability to charm all other living beings, because a good podcast is hosted by charismatic people. So I don't know, go to Toastmasters or something if you feel like you can't do it, but you can. It's fine.
Yeah, I also think a very, very important factor in our success is that Meagan and I would do the podcast whether we were getting paid for it or not, because we truly love to do it, and we mostly don't get paid. So
we mostly don't. Yeah.
So
we do, but I think it's really valuable to have a podcast that's solvent enough to keep going. The payment for us will come.
Right. Yeah. Because the truth is, obviously, we all know it's a huge landscape. Who knows what's going to happen to anyone's podcast?
Right.
But if you're making something that you love, you can't lose. You know what I mean? And sometimes Meagan is annoyed by me, and I'm afraid she's going to quit the podcast. And
any day now.
It would be devastating, not because I would lose some income stream, but because I would lose my favorite thing that I get to do. And so it's sort of there's this intangible where yes, I spent 20 years building a base of people who like my work. And so, if you don't have that, obviously maybe that helps. But it didn't really help us that much.
It didn't.
And everyone finds, I'm sure there are people who would love a podcast from any person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do think that we are extra charismatic and hilarious.
I agree.
But I think that everyone has an audience out there.
Yes, that you do.
And so as long as you're doing something that you love, I think that comes across, and I don't think there's a downside.
So very quickly, in conclusion, make the show that you want to make. And make sure that it's authentic to you and your interests. They say your podcast should be about something. That is not true. I think we've proven that here today. It doesn't have to be about anything. It just has to be like interesting to the right group of people, and you'll find them. Definitely invest in your show first before you invest in yourself. Like, find people to help you. Otherwise, you're going to burn out, and then your show dies, and then you die, and it's just really sad. Trust your stinks.
Yep.
It's good to get advice, but if someone gives you some that makes you feel like, oh, I don't know, then you don't have to take it. You know, there lots of people are experts in podcasting, but they might not be experts in comedy, or they might not be experts in bees. They might not be experts in open water swimming, which is for some reason come up every single day at this podcast. You know, so you should find somebody whose advice you trust. And then really, this is so important, is like build a community with your audience. Like, make them feel like they're a part of your show, because they are.
Yeah. They're a really important part of your show.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're literally just talking to your best friend on the phone.
And in the final 15 seconds of our presentation, please stare into this hypnosis thing. Subscribe to our Patreon.
Listen
to Text Me Back Podcast.
Text Me Back Podcast.
Follow. Rate and review.
Tell your
Wherever
friends.
you get your podcasts, it's Text Me Back Podcast. Look at that. It's a QR code where you can find links to everything you need to know about Text Me Back Podcast.
Text Me Back Podcast.
Patreon.com/Text Me Back Podcast. Thank you for coming
Thank
to
you.
our
We're
show.
out of time.
Goodbye.
That was fun.
Oh, we'll be around a little bit if you have questions.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.